evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Mahoning Drive-In Theater, the largest single-screen drive-in in the United States. We're certainly glad you could be with us this evening, and don't forget the concession stand is open with all kinds of great things to eat and drink.
.3 Mahoning Drive-In Radio, your old friend Virgil back once again for another exciting episode of the podcast. As you guys know, the only podcast dedicated to the love and revival of our beloved drive-in culture. Joined as always by my co-host and general manager extraordinaire, Mark. Say hello, my friend.
Hello.
We are so excited, as we have mentioned many times on the podcast, the off-season venture for this year is in full swing as we are preparing for our Mahoning Roadshow, which takes the mantra and love and preservation efforts that brew at the Mahoning every single weekend on the road, takes it to indoor houses that also share that love of 35 millimeter. Every single time somebody new comes to the theater and falls in love with what we do, it's such a blessing. But now we feel like our light shined upon the drive-in culture can widen a bit. And especially when it comes to 35 millimeter, it's essential, being that we are in a category alone. And taking it into the indoor houses, shedding some light and shining some love on the local indoor houses. And today we are super excited to have Trey Shields, who is the director of year-round programming and senior festival programmer at the Philadelphia Film Society, which has been a huge crossover with what we do, being that most of our fan base is coming in from Philadelphia, Jersey, and New York. So that love for film is a natural cross. Welcome to the show, Trey.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Man, we are so excited to have you. The hats that you wear, we're so curious, not only what you do at Philadelphia Film Society, what Philadelphia Film Society is all about, but this partnership that really, we were on the same page. I'm going to preface this whole podcast with this. We soft launched From the Shore last year with, what, Mark, 2 or 3 shows?
I think it was 3.
Yeah, in the off season last year. And the whole idea behind this was, again, a preservation effort for 35 millimeter, trying to partner up with indoor houses that share the same love of 35 millimeter, have a fan base and appreciation, all of that. And I believe it was earlier this year, Trey reached out and was like, you know what would be awesome is if we did something where you guys came in and curated and, you know, maybe in the off season. And I was like, all right, this is too divine, like too divine that you came to us with pretty much the same exact idea for this whole road show and partnering up. So I love
I
that.
will add though, the offer's still out there for you guys to bring the food. To fully recreate the experience. Because I was like, let's have the full experience. I want corn dogs.
You know, Mama Beth will be all about it. Just like, you know, some pre-made corn dogs and do the whole Mahoning vibe. And that's really what we want to do this year, is lean into it and bring other aspects to why people love the Mahoning to other indoor spaces. But when I say crossed over for years, we've been doing this now for 10 years, and the retro programming in the area, it naturally bubbles up to the top, and you guys often have bubbled up to the top with the really cool stuff that you guys are doing. So why don't we just start with how you got involved with PFS and what PFS really is?
Yeah, totally. And one thing I'll mention, our paths crossed years ago too with the documentary, real quick.
Yeah.
The At the Drive-In.
That's right.
I think we had the world premiere of
you guys screened it, because you guys were doing the screenings for,
I think it was for the festival. I forget what
the
year.
Film Fest. That's right.
And I forget, were you out there for it, Virgil? Because I know I did the Q&As, but I don't know if I just did it with the director.
You know, I really have this memory. I believe it was Al and myself.
Yes.
Just the two of us. And yeah, that was one of the first times I had seen it on a screen.
Yeah.
Like in a public forum. It was amazing. And, you know, your theater is such a perfect space for the love and the culture of film being so like in the heart of the city, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you got William Penn in City Hall, a block away. You got the scenes from Blowout. And a lot of people think the scene where he's on the phone, talk to somebody, and there's a theater in the background, they think it's ours, but sadly it was around the corner, a block away. But
Yeah, I'll
anyway,
take that credit.
yeah. And we almost got in on, I watched, what was it called? Oh, man. As we'll learn throughout this entire podcast, my recall ability has become nothing. There's just too many movies and dates and emails swimming in my head. But oh, Winter Kills, that wild movie. Yeah, there's some shots, but I was hoping our theater would get in on that too, but didn't happen. But going back to the beginning, I joined PFS, I think about 12 years ago at this point.
Yeah.
I volunteered. I went to like a volunteer training for the film festival. I had been in the restaurant industry and I had a lapse in between jobs for a moment. I was like, you know what? I've always loved movies. I spent my entire like junior high, high school watching films, even though I definitely came from a music background and performed in like bands at like local shows and did a little bit of touring and stuff like that,
Yeah.
recorded albums. But I was that person who just like once the rental store saw where the wind was blowing, that it was like rent one, get three free. I just took advantage of that and watched everything possible of like the canon and just a lot of like old just like classics and really fell in love with it. But it was always just kind of a hobby. But anyway, so I volunteered and then they asked me, oh, do you want to run like be the venue manager for the festival? Just I guess off of good vibes or general competence.
Yeah.
And I said, sure. So I did the volunteer venue manager. Later did I learn that it's traditionally a paid position, but you know, they got some free labor out of
They
that.
snuck you in there.
Yeah. And then I came back and did it again the following year. But throughout that year and then the following year, I just kind of hung around the office because the Film Society at that point was about 5 to maybe like 6 year-round staff members. We didn't have any theater that we operated year-round. We would generally rent out theaters for the festival for the 11 days.
Yeah.
And that was it. And we had memberships, like program and stuff. But I just kept hanging around, just doing odd jobs. And I just kept giving ideas out. And probably in looking back on it, was really annoying. Because I think I would be very annoyed with me back then. But I was always willing to help. But I often had ideas to like just make things better. Or just from films that we played, but also the experience and the ambiance and the hospitality and interacting with people.
Building that community.
Yeah. And they finally found somewhere for me to be full time because it's kind of tough when there's only 5 or 6 positions.
Yeah, yeah.
But I took over membership, did that for a little bit, and then just kept being that annoying person with ideas and being in the right place, always saying yes to like step in to do Q&As, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, so now I'm kind of the poster child, maybe not necessarily for that free labor, but for the volunteer situation.
Right.
Because now, you know, I get to go to Cannes. You know, that's always like the pitch.
Come on.
Yeah.
You start, you know, hell, this is kind of a perfect crossover in many ways. Not only are you a band guy just like myself, and we've come into this thing right around the same exact time, but it is a situation where you really have to give yourself over to the thing that you love, and you never know what is going to come of that. Yeah. And, you know, your story right there, the climbing up the ladder, our magic carpet story, it's putting your heart and passion into something and having all of the idea of, you know, financial success and stability. Yeah. When you're so passionate, and you can relate, when you're so passionate, it's not even a thought in your brain.
Yeah, it's just a no-brainer. And then you think about it all the time.
Yeah.
And it's not just about movies. It's about everything, about the community.
Totally. And that's why I think you guys stand out, just like our story is. People are kind of used to the indoor experience being this sterile, big box, multiplex, and it's much more a deeper appreciation when you visit houses that we'll be visiting in the off season. So was that really your ins? And did you say you guys didn't have like a home theater when you first started? So when did that happen?
I'll probably get dates messed up, but
yeah,
probably around 2015, we took over a small 2-screener, just under 80 seats each, called the Roxy.
Yeah.
Still downtown in Center City in Philly. It had been a long staple that, has huge ties to like the film community. I believe it was founded by Max Rabb, who was a producer, and he was the one brave enough and willing enough to bring Clockwork Orange to the US for distribution when no one else would touch it. And he also, I think his other claim to fame is Nicholas Roeg's Walkabout, bringing that over here. But so it's small two screen, but over the years, it had charm, but it also had rats. Not when we had it, but I'm sure there were some there too. But
Some say having rats is having charm.
yeah, exactly. Especially Philly rats, they got
That's
the
right.
But it had gone into like kind of dire straits and was just plain first run stuff, but nothing really happening. So they closed and we took it over. And that was our first experience having like a home theater. And Philly is just there's so many things that I think worked with the place. And it was very exciting to be there at the ground level and do stuff. But when you are a traditional kind of independent theater and you're trying to, do the first runs and you're trying to be strategically and artistically minded, but also you have to be sustainable. Yes. It becomes very difficult to run like a 2-screen small house because you're obligated to play. If you're doing a first run film, you got to play it at 7 o'clock every night. So you lose vital space like a Friday night 7 to do a really cool double feature like horror stuff or genre stuff.
Right.
So it was difficult, but we did try out where I took over a whole screen with the team for a couple months, and it was great. And that's when people got started to get excited. It's where you can flex and show creativity and really like program specific rep stuff for the audience and also push some buttons, get people to step out of their comfort zone.
Heck yeah.
But that was the Roxy. And then we had that, and then we got a huge grant. So our event will be with you guys, our big flagship theater. It's gone through a couple names. We're currently going with Film Society Center, but most of the city knows it as the Philadelphia Film Center, or just everyone calls it the Film Center. We took over that. I want to say probably a couple years after that, we got a huge donation to save the theater. It had been for the past decade plus a live arts musical theater. We did rent it out for the festival for your big kind of centerpiece screenings, but it was a musical theater and they had to close. And so we got a donation to reopen it, to save it, and continue to operate it as kind of a mixed use space.
Amazing.
And then during COVID, 2 of the 3 Ritzes that Landmark had taken over, so no longer independent, Landmark owns them.
Yeah.
Their leases had ran up, and the landlords definitely wanted to switch gears and kind of remain local, support an independent organization, a nonprofit like us. So we were able to take over the Ritz East, which is a 2-screener, and the Ritz Boers, which is a subterranean, now it's called the PFS Boers, or Film Society Boers in East, subterranean 5-screen theater. So we now operate, what is that, 9 screens.
And this is all over Philly, or this is in kind of a centralized location?
Yeah, so the Film Society Center is right dead smack in the center. It's Broad and Chestnut, just south of Market, so like right where the big kind of throughways hit. And then the Boers in the east, they're in Old City. Like think like lower numbers, close to the Delaware, very colonial, really beautiful, especially during the fall, early winter area.
I gotta say, some of these questions I'm asking you, I do know the answers to, because these theaters that you're mentioning, like these were the theaters that I had to travel to, being in the suburbs of Philadelphia, to go and see the movies that really impacted us, in our youth. It was very much you have to kind of travel into the city to see those art house films or get any sort of repertory when we were in high school. So just what your guys' efforts have done for an area that I so love. I mean, in reality, your guys stepping in was saving those movie houses for generations to come. Yeah. So that's why I think what you guys do, it's so beyond the quote unquote programming appeal or preservation efforts when it comes to the format of 35 millimeter like us. You guys are really doing God's work when it comes to the cinematic area. So
I appreciate it.
I thank you guys for that, because again, it's I think back to those years, and to not have those houses is the reality that mostly every small town deals with. They
Yeah.
say, "Oh, I had this theater that influenced me, made me who I am." Of course, it's a CVS now, but with you guys being in Philadelphia, it's very much a rich culture to begin with, but having young, passionate people come in and revitalize the area, like, it's endless inspiration. So,
Yeah, and the young people are turning up too, not even behind the scenes, like coming out.
yeah,
It's been wild. I don't know, because you guys have always cultivated a pretty strong younger audience since the kind of rebirth, what, like same around the same time, like 10,
right,
12.
and same
Yeah.
time, 2014,
Yeah.
2015. It's insane.
But yeah, since COVID, I mean, because your backbone for any major city was always kind of affluent, retired, older guests, or would be like the ones that go to the matinees that would come out to the film festival, and you'd always be hunting for those
Right,
younger
cater.
people who are excited and passionate and maybe willing to watch more daring, experimental, challenging films. And it's been going pretty hard since like coming out of COVID. And I attribute it to just the culture that everyone's building in Philly and connecting, but also Letterbox has done its job.
I'm telling you, man, it's again that revitalization of the culture. People can kind of find their community if they're not getting it in their hometowns now. And they're finding that, oh, if I travel an hour to the Mahoning, or I travel 45 minutes into Philly or whatever,
Yeah.
it makes all the difference just as far as their fill of this experience that we all love. And in the beginning, what was kind of the mission of the Film Society when you guys didn't have a theater to kind of lean into?
So it was to do the festival. Often, it's not the most creative name, but I think it's a badge of honor to be the Philadelphia Film Society.
Heck yeah.
That a lot of major cities, they have long held institutions and mostly nonprofits will be like the Denver Film Society, Seattle Film Society. And ours was to put on a festival, was to bring the world of contemporary cinema to Philadelphia and big films, the buzzy titles, the small ones. And I feel like it's the purpose of it has even emerged more as streaming has risen and films just get lost in the shuffle. Sometimes they don't even get a streaming deal, let alone end up in a be able to shown in a theater. And
Yeah.
so that was always like, the goal. And it was to enrich, to bring culture, to create community, to educate, and then of course entertain. And it was the festival. And we were nonprofit and supported. We have like a membership program. And what we would do is we would have access to a lot of those sneak previews that happen throughout any major city throughout the week for
Yeah.
new films, and we had access to that, so we'd be able to offer members, as a way to engage year round, despite the festival only being 11 days in the fall. And we knew we just wanted to go bigger and be able to program more to really get meaningful community initiatives and education programs. And that's kind of still where we are today. And we're just going so hard all the time now with just tons of different events. It almost makes it more difficult to build awareness of like individual things because there's just so much happening. But I think it's really cool because it allows people to find the piece of the film society that they want to be a part of or engage with.
Because there's so many options out there now.
Yeah. Like these days, like we've been doing singles mixers recently.
Come on.
Yeah. And it's a hit.
It really swing for the fences when
Yeah.
you have this growth. I think back to even a couple years ago, we were only running before the pandemic, ironically. Before everything hit, we were just Fridays and Saturdays.
Yeah.
And what we could do was so limited, and being able to spread those wings, naturally you try new things. And when you find your community, you also want to feed them as many experiences as they can handle, really.
Yeah. Because when you're limited to Friday, Saturdays, for better or worse, you're going to kind of have tunnel vision or like, what are the bigger titles? Like,
Yes.
mainstays. But once you're able to like spread out a little bit and you can find that balance. And that's all I ever try to do is like, I'll play the hits. But then if that does well, that allows me to afford the space financially and the actual physical space to play more deep cut hidden gems that, 20 people might show up to, but they're going to remember, like, that's why we're a nonprofit film society, because we try to offer a little bit of everything to everybody.
Yeah, you can relate to this. Every time I got on a stage, whether it was performing, theater or bands later in my life, it was always this mantra of give them something that they're going to remember for, years to come, not
Yeah.
just disposable. So just carrying that into our business lives, I think, really has done wonders. But
Yeah.
I want to talk about kind of your role with programming. Like, are
Yeah.
you responsible for all of those theaters, or are you kind of delegating out? Is somebody responsible for each of the theaters? How does that work?
So basically, I do all the rep stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because what happened coming out of COVID was before that, the films, or like the film center was, we were trying to do first run stuff, and it just, you're obligated to do it for 3 weeks often, hold it like a large film. And we just weren't seeing the sustainability of that. By the end of week 2, Philly
Yeah.
had seen the film, who people were going to go to the theater. And so coming out of COVID, I was like, let me get weird and just let me just have Wednesday through Sunday, because I think a big part of it is just people knowing that, oh, there's always something going on.
Yeah,
It used to be
it's an
like,
option.
yeah, it used to be like, oh, there's a random Tuesday we're doing a cool film, but how does anyone know?
Right.
So I was just like, give me Wednesday through Sunday, and I'm just gonna do stuff. And we brought back some of our recurring monthly like rep stuff, but then I started doing limited series and really starting to like get outside
Flex.
just the common kind of reps like selections, and just finding a
Totally.
balance so that maybe one title in a limited series is maybe recognizable. Maybe it's a favor, something you've always heard about, so you watch that, but then you start to go down the rabbit hole of checking out some of the more unknown titles in the selections. But basically, yeah, I like select, schedule, program, book, and then kind of run the show for the rep things, and then working with like our marketing team, our education team, our community team, find ways to find partners, to how to message. I don't create them as much, but I would make like, custom trailers for every single month. I still do the festival trailer every year, but just not, I don't do the multiple monthly ones because that was getting out of control.
All the hats.
Yeah.
All the
It's
hats.
all the hats for sure. And I do a little bit of everything.
So awesome.
But these days, and it's always very funny because people are like, oh, you're not sitting for the film. But I'm like, chances are, if we're playing it, I probably revisited it recently. And also, I got to get away from work sometimes.
People always assume that your life is watching movies,
Oh,
right?
yeah. These days, it's a lot of emailing. I do. And I love, it's all emailing and spreadsheets and schedules, but also it's a lot of just research. I love learning and reading. I do it with music too. Whenever I find an artist, especially contemporary stuff, I go
Yeah.
down the rabbit hole of like influences, and then I end up in a totally different place.
That's fandom,
Like,
baby. It's
yeah.
a sickness, but it's
So
a glorious thing.
yeah, and that's how like that really influences the curation process for the rep stuff. Yeah, and I have an excellent, like, we have an education and programming manager who, Ye Sula, who handles mostly education, but they have taken the reins on our monthly local film showcase where we do local shorts. We've been doing it for over a decade now. That's totally free to attend. And we do Q&As
Beautiful.
with the directors and stuff. And then just, different programs. And then our artistic director, Mike Lerman, handles the first runs, like the bookings there.
Yeah.
And he lives out in LA, so he's Philly native, but lives out in LA, and so he goes all the trades and does that. And he does the majority of the traveling for festival stuff.
Doing his part from afar. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's shift a little bit to 35 millimeter. So of the 4 houses, 9 screens,
Yeah.
what of them has the capability to run 35 millimeter or otherwise?
Just the film center right now. We used to have it at the Roxy, and then we had to take it apart to get it out of the booth because everything was very small there.
Yes.
And it just, once you take apart an old projector, it's going to be very difficult to put it back together. So we have the pieces, but yeah, the film center is the only one, like in the main house, which is our big 450 seat theater.
And how often are you guys programming 35 millimeter in that house? I take it also has the capability to run digital in there.
Yeah, it's a state-of-the-art like 4K projector. We got dual reel-to-reel 35s. I would say on average, there's at least one a month, and
Yes.
some months they go crazy. But the biggest issue these days is the cost prohibitiveness of shipping for us.
Oh yeah, we know it.
It's absurd, and so it's very difficult. But yeah, and as you guys know, you work with Harry and the Exhumed guys all the time.
Yeah.
That has been a blessing because Harry lives 15 minutes away from me,
Come
just
on, yeah.
bridge in Jersey. So I just go over there and don't have to pay for shipping for that, you know? So we'll
Boom.
pick up. So we a lot of times it's our after hours programs or the genre late night stuff because that's a big part of their archive is the 35 selections. But some stuff, has never been made into a DCP for digital projections, so we'll use the 35. And whenever it's available, we generally go with that.
Do you find that there is an appeal to that, at least in that house
Oh
and
yeah.
in that area, really?
Yeah, I think it makes it more of an event. And I think that's another key factor in the whole how to save the cinema going experience.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't like too hyperbolic like wild or kind of crazy events. I don't need that, but just something that's just like something you really can't get at home. So
Yeah.
whether it is the film selection, if it's something that doesn't have physical media, isn't never been available for streaming, or it's that added addition of presenting something on 35. And the biggest, I mean, I don't think this is the reason why it shows that has a huge appeal because I think it would have done well regardless. But we were so fortunate to be one of the handful of theaters in the country to have early screenings of Longlegs with
Come
30,
on.
with a cut of on 35.
That's totally what I was going to segue into is that,
Yeah.
being in a major city do you find that there are advantages when it comes to the new generation of filmmakers that lean into 35 millimeter and these kind of roadshow tours?
Yeah. I really, I mean, I think so a lot. But it's funny because I don't know if it would come as a surprise, but like Philly is really not seen as a great general audience film going market. And it's a shame that we're like in the shadow of New York and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the blocks we've been stacking and the community we've been building, it's people have started to take notice, and that's why we now have access to this kind of thing, where we are one of the only handful of places that get to do the 35 screenings of like the new films. Because these ones they only made a handful of prints. So there was like the Northeast, in the East Coast, and that was basically it, and then Chicago. But yeah, I feel like they've started to pay attention, which is so nice because for the longest time we weren't even getting just any big films
Yeah.
because
They
big,
didn't care
especially in
about
the the non-studio big films, they're like, oh yeah, like Philly market isn't doing great.
whatever.
But the long leg stuff, it sold out the main house, so it's like 450 seats, a 7 o'clock screening, like 2 weeks in advance. I was like, okay, all right, I
Something's
guess.
happening here.
Yeah,
Something's
and we only
happening.
have one day available, so I was like, I guess we'll do a 10 o'clock. That sounds like no one will go because Philly also goes to bed pretty early, I will say.
Yeah, yeah.
But we did a 10 o'clock, and I was like, maybe we'll get like 50 people. At least we'll be able to accommodate those who couldn't get into the first screening. And then
Boom.
that's sold out.
Yep. It's madness.
Yeah, so that was quite eye-opening.
Well, I will say, just like I often preach, you can look at the Mahoning story when people question the longevity or the legs that the drive-in culture has
Yeah.
moving into the future. I think you can absolutely point to your work and your team's work over the last even, 10 years and say, hey, we are really taking the steps to prove that the Philly market is just
Yeah.
as viable a market as New York or otherwise.
Yeah, and I think that's the whole future of the cinema going experience, driving or otherwise, is embracing your community and engaging with them and listening and talking because the megaplexes are gonna go out because it's just transactional. There's no sense of loyalty besides transactional, like, oh cool, you get discounts, you know?
Yeah, I'm in this club. Yeah, I get movies a little bit cheaper every time I go, but it's
Yeah.
no personal.
Yeah,
I'm in a
and
club though.
yeah. And who knows? I mean, I don't go to megaplexes that much, but I just remember you always have your favorite staff people that work there, and I just don't know if turnover happens a lot these days because they're just seem to always be wading in the water, trying to fight for survival. These
Yeah.
theaters.
It's very hard.
Yeah.
Like being where you are, I think it's just like a different world than the suburbs where I'm at. But I
Yeah.
think everybody that is somebody like us, like all three of us, that is such a lover of movies and needs that intake of movies, they find their, house or their
Yeah.
community or their few people in the theater, like you said, that they can have some sort of an experience with. But more times than not, it's what we're finding is people willing to travel all over the place and from all over the place to experience what has now become such a enriching community for them. It's worth any bit of travel when it comes to that.
Yeah, I mean, I used to go to New York all the time. I'll never forget, one of the only times I ever asked my parents to borrow the car, and I said it was for after school stuff. I took it to the Trenton train station so I could go up to New York to see Brick.
Yep, my man.
Yeah,
My man. That's the thing is, see, especially when you're younger, like the journeys that we had to go on to see certain movies, like
yeah,
when you tell the next generation about that, they're just so used to getting everything anytime immediately, that the idea of making this journey and venture, hopefully it's shifting back. But this is the Drive-In Podcast. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk to you about your drive-in experiences. And if you were lucky enough, did you grow up in the city? Did you?
No, I grew up all over. I was born in Florida, allegedly, and then lived in California, Arizona, but then junior high into high school, really firmly established in the burbs of Philly. And then I stayed, and my parents now, went back to California, and now they're in Arizona. But yeah, so I've been in Philly. I've been in Philly proper, like in the city, for almost 20 years, I would say.
Yeah.
And then the burbs was probably like late 90s.
Where were you in the burbs? Just curious because
Like Bucks County, Holland, Newtown, Richboro.
totally. Yeah.
Like Council Rock was the school district.
Heck yeah. Rivals of Hapro Horsham.
Oh yeah.
Just kidding. Yeah. Well, as far as the placement, did you have an option to go to drive-ins where you were?
Not that I was aware of. I'm trying to recall because I mean I've been out to Mahoning a billion times, but I'm trying to think if I ever even did one. I feel like there was one maybe in Arizona when I was younger, but not out here. And
Yeah.
I know there's some that exists in the periphery, but
It became impossible at a certain time, and we're around the
yeah,
same age. So it's like that situation where you really, it's almost like when I ran a vineyard for several years. And when you're down in Philadelphia at a farmer's market or in Rittenhouse Square,
yeah,
and you tell them, hey, this was grown in Pennsylvania, they look at you like, there's not vineyards in
yeah.
Pennsylvania.
Oh, I know about
Because
that.
they don't know. And same thing with drive-ins. Like the Bucks County Twin, I would say was one of the last of the Philadelphia area to go out, and that would have been like late mid 90s, something like
Okay.
that. So
Yeah, so I might have completely missed it, or just like it was right around the same time.
my memories are you always had to travel to it. So
Yeah. We did do during COVID, we did pivot and open up and I wasn't really part of it
pop
because
up.
a lot of us were furloughed, but like we had a drive-in theater down in like the south point of Philly near the airport.
How did that work? I mean, obviously it was a pop-up, but how did that work?
I mean, I know as much as I know. Basically, like they took shipping containers and stacked them on top and then popped the screen on that.
I love stories like this because it's like, oh, you want me to stop watching movies?
Yeah.
Get out of here. We will stack containers and pull a sheet across.
Yeah. And we had a screen on both sides. So you could run like dual screenings of different stuff.
Yeah.
And it was really special. It did like really well. It could get very muddy down there because you're near the water and it's pretty low grounding, but it was definitely a place. And I'm really bummed I didn't make it out there once things started opening up a little bit because I was like, get me back in the normal theater. But
Totally, I get it.
but I feel like it really became a culture down there too, with people being able to get out of their cars because there was a pretty strict like you're not going around chatting, you're kind of staying in your car in your bubble. But it was really cool, and the team that put it together like worked really hard and like they pulled it off. And It was just amazing, like the pivoting, because you don't always get that as companies, organizations grow. Be able to pivot really hard in a very timely manner, do it well, is very difficult.
We totally feel that, and I feel
Yeah.
that everybody feels that because the pandemic presented a time where we couldn't even fathom that any of this was like happening. So
Yeah.
it was really just like a do or die situation for everybody collectively, and to kind of find your footing out of that is again really inspiring, and I think why people feel so a need to support places like us, and
Yeah.
outfits like us.
But yeah, I dreamed of going to drive-ins growing up. I mean, even in something like Greece, I was just like, wow, that is the coolest thing ever.
It is. It has a lore to it when you're a movie fan,
Yeah.
and there's these experiences that you want when you're a movie fan, and we find that just the setting in general is a draw for a lot of people, and movies and the programming can be secondary. You just kind of got to tap into what's appropriate for them. But
Yeah.
I say it's not hard to fall in love with the drive-in experience.
Oh yeah.
I don't want to take up all of your time. Mark, I'm sure, has some burning questions for you as well, and I'll leave it up to him to talk about what we've set up in the roadshow on February 28th.
One question I had was about the film center itself. I went there for Exhumed about a year or so ago, did a double feature with Silvia Colatina of Italian horror films, and I was just taken aback. So far aback, I fell over. I was taken aback at how gorgeous that building is and the facility is. Did the Film Society have to do a lot to, like, any renovation when you took that over, or did you basically step into a place that was that beautiful?
It was basically that beautiful, at least in as far as public facing, right? Because it is an old building. I think the actual site was built like at the turn of the century of the 20th century.
Yep.
But the big rehab was done in 1999 when it became the Prince Music Theater. And so that, like, the major work was done, and now it's just kind of a lot of like the pipes, the HVAC, and then also updating like the tech and stuff, the audio visual presentation. But we actually just we did a huge, like, raised a lot of money to work on the facade and making the whole place more like kind of streamlined and accessible, and try to feel more homey, like it's people's second home. Hopefully a little bit more moody lighting, because I love moody lighting. I don't like just all white bright lights on top of you. But yeah, the majority of the space was what you saw when we took it over.
And it was interesting, you were talking about the history of Philly theaters and the theaters in that area. During that show that we went to, there was a dinner break, I think, at one point, or lunch break, and we went out to have lunch at some sort of theater, or some sort of restaurant. And as we were walking to the restaurant, I noticed these things that were very clearly once marquees.
Yes.
And one is like a Foot Locker, and then
Yeah.
we were sitting right across the street from either that one or one that's become a Five Below.
Yeah.
So we're waiting for our food, and I open up Cinema Treasures to figure out what was there, and I find a photograph of Cary Grant and Grace Kelly walking out of that theater I'm looking at, the former theater I'm looking at, for the Philly premiere of To Catch a Thief. And it was just like, the history is just everywhere. And it's cool. I mean, it's unfortunate that they're not theaters anymore, but it's cool that the marquees remain to give somebody, cultural cinematic archaeologists, a clue at what they used to be. I can't think of what the name of the theater was now, but it was just amazing that amount of history still exists, or did occur, 2 minutes from where the film center is.
Yeah, and there was so many. I mean, I think there's like close to 100 theaters in like Philly proper.
Yeah.
And you just see remnants of the marquees everywhere. Sometimes just the facade has been changed, but you can see the back of the building, like, oh, that was a theater.
To have a time machine.
Everywhere I go, every little small town, I'm always looking, because you can tell the shape of an old theater if you can see the side or the back, because there's always, where that bump up in the back, or you can tell like the way the entryway to a business is, that was probably once a theater. And it's always to see how much remains, like whether what they just repurpose the architecture, or they just totally got it, or what. I know in Boston, in Chinatown, there's a former grand old Chinese movie theater that's a restaurant now. And you walk in and it feels like you're walking into a theater, and the dining room is basically, they just took the seats out and leveled the floor, but there's still like the proscenium is there, and the old balcony is there. And I'm a sucker for that kind of stuff. Speaking of drive-ins, this is what we ask everybody. You're completely unprepared for this. So if we have to play the match game music while you think we'll do that.
Yeah.
If you were given the ability to program a night or a weekend at the Mahoning, regardless of whether it would result in financial ruin for the organization, what films would you select?
It's definitely going to be genre tinged for sure. For double feature, because the tough thing is, I do a lot of this, and I do a lot of double features that I don't even promote. In my head, they just make sense. Like we don't even call them double features, but I play them back to back on like a Friday night.
Yeah.
One I would like to do, and it was a film I saw for the first time somehow 2 years ago, was The Hidden with Kyle MacLachlan.
Yeah.
I think it's like Jack Shoulder, John
Yeah,
Shoulder?
totally. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. And that movie just blew me away. I was like, where's this movie been my whole life? Because Twin Peaks is my favorite thing ever created. So if we go off of that, we'll say it's a Twin Peaks Bizarro universe. Because I remember when I wrote like the blurb notes for that when we played it the following year, I like basically just like I wrote it like it could be describing Twin Peaks, but it really, especially if you know the twist of The Hidden, it could be just it's describing The Hidden as well. As like an out of town like federal officer comes in to work with local police to solve a crime, and he's like idiosyncratic and odd, both played by Kyle MacLachlan. So say a bizarro Twin Peaks universe where you play The Hidden, and then I recently revisited because we're gonna play it next year. The People Under the Stairs. Where you get Big Ed and Nadine.
Come on!
I remember.
Right? You get Big Ed and Nadine as if their marriage continued, but they went down a different rabbit hole and lived in a different city and had a different provocation. So I feel like that'd be a fun double feature.
Wow, that's next level. I love the intricacy of the connection, the connective tissue.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen The Hidden 2?
No, I heard it exists.
It exists.
Yeah.
We played. I think that was the double we did, right, Mark?
Oh,
in
nice.
Hidden 2?
No, I don't think we played Hidden 2. You might have done that unofficially after The Hidden. I feel like The Hidden might have been a single feature. Maybe.
Yeah,
That was a Thursday night show.
Harry, yeah, maybe.
Yeah. And then from there, I guess go down the rabbit hole of like other surprising performances from the many characters of Twin Peaks. Because you get some of the people in The Hidden as well. I forget the actor's name, but who plays Hank? He's the first possessed guy driving the car at the beginning of The Hidden.
Yeah, for anybody who like doesn't know it, like if you know what that would be is a great drop late night at the David Lynch event. Have all the Twin Peaks fans there and then be like, what is this? Wait a minute, look who it is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I remember like we had a great crowd for it, and I would say a majority of the crowd, easily majority, if not 80%, had never heard of the film, or seen it. And everyone just walked out of there like, wow, that was the best. It just hits all the notes.
That's one of the things you always hope for when you're programming is to either build enough of a reputation and trust with your audience that they will come out for things they've never heard of, just because if you say it's good, they're going to give it a shot. And that people will be willing to go on that ride, going to see things blind. That's always what we wrestle with. It's like you said earlier, you have to play the big stuff so that you can afford to play the little stuff and hope people show up. And a ton of people are going to come out when you play Indiana Jones or Grease or whatever. But when you play Harrison Ford in Frantic, it's like, come on, just trust us, guys. Just come out and you know the guy. It's going to be fun. And it's good to hear that, folks, because The Hidden, I remember when it came out, it got promoted. It didn't really do that much, but it grew a lot on video afterwards. But it's kind of, again, been forgotten, and it's a total blast. So it's cool that that many people showed up who hadn't seen it before.
Yeah, and that's definitely always the goal, and that's the dream, is the trust, And yeah, I feel like that's just I can't put it any better. It's just that's what you seek. That's where I get the most pleasure out of the job, because I've always loved sharing stuff. I've loved sharing music. I love sharing films, just telling people about stuff. And this is that job, which is crazy.
It's an extension of that. Being a booker and a programmer, it's taking the years of, hey, you got to hear this band, or hey, you got to watch this movie. There are elements of that you can sneak in, and if you're good at it, you can really have people come along for that ride.
Yeah.
That's what I love about Harry and Exhumed Films and what they've done over the years is they didn't give a shit about, hey, if people show up or not. Like there was always this thing of like, if they're not coming, it's their own fault.
Yeah.
And
On
I
them.
love that just risque, ballsy, beg to be seen programming.
Yeah.
So this Mahoning Road Show that we've gathered together to talk about today.
Yeah.
So we are appearing, as we said earlier, on the 28th of February, 2025 at the Philadelphia Film Society's Film Society Center, and we are screening two classy films. We are screening Abel Ferrara's Ms. 45 from 1981, followed by, if you've survived that film, followed by Gary Sherman's Vice Squad from 1982. Two just wonderfully sleazy tales of urban horror and vigilante justice and just mayhem in the streets. We got the East Coast, West Coast thing going on. New York City in the Fear City early 80s with Ms. 45 from 81. And then we span a year and a coast, or a year and a continent, and we go over to the West Coast and it's sleazy LA. And not enough people do talk about, everybody, focuses on New York City and 42nd Street and Times Square and all that. LA had its own sleazy area, or several of them. And there are a few movies that Angel's another one that really covers that well. And Vice Squad is a movie that it looms large in the Mahoning legend, because if you've seen At the Drive-In, Al Manelli's documentary about the Mahoning, available on streaming services and DVD. If you've seen At the Drive-In, there's a moment where Virgil and Jeff both go, "Wings Hauser!" That was
born off of that movie, which screened
that was the first time we ran Vice Squad, which is tremendously entertaining, super sleazy. Wings Hauser is just a sweaty maniac. He plays a pimp named Ramrod, who this like renegade pimp who's being chased by a call girl who's been victimized by him, and a cop who's trying to take him down, and it's a race against time before this. I'm going to keep saying it. Renegade pimp does worse things. And then you have Ms. 45, which is about a woman who's brutalized on the streets of New York. I believe it's twice in one night, and it's very hard to watch and horrifying. But then she just picks up the titular hog leg and just starts cleaning up the streets of New York. And they are not categorized as horror movies, but I've often thought of a genre sort of like urban horror or crime horror, like the original Dirty Harry kind of plays like a horror movie. And Ms. 45 and Vice Squad, I saw Vice Squad again recently on the same print that we'll be screening local to where I am, and it plays like a dream with the right crowd. So I'm hoping folks turn up for these and are just they gird their loins and grit their teeth to get through the unpleasantness, because I always say any revenge film has to have something really heinous happen up front so that you are just so ready for the protagonist to take apart everybody involved with that for the rest of the movie.
Yes.
You guys, have you seen one or both of these? Do you have any thoughts on Ms. 45 or Vice Squad?
Yeah, I mean, Ms. 45 is definitely one of the more like infamous ones. I saw it a long time ago. And so in preparation and thinking about the different prints you guys had available and stuff, I revisited it because I was like, I remember it's a tough film, but I was just blown away by the thoughtfulness of the movie and just how wonderful it is, in that it's totally her movie, and it's, even though like Abel Ferrara can be known as like a sleaze sometimes, and driller killer stuff, but I just thought there was so much subtext going on with the film. And Zoe Lund playing the Miss 45 title character just is so phenomenal in it. And it has an all-time 80s dance party scene, which that would be my weekend. All right, here we go. That's my dream weekend festival, would be just scenes of the best 80s, late 70s dance parties in a film. And they could only take up maybe only like a couple minutes of the whole movie, but they're just that good. And because there's a lot of bad movies from this era with really good party scenes, and they just always, people had lowered inhibitions, they had a crazier fashion, the music was better most of the time. That would be the dream.
That sounds like this phenomenal like supercut that somebody could put together.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
just cut those all together, maybe even with just one piece of music that goes under all of it so that it wasn't harsh, you know, to the brain and the ears.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a good disco scene in Nighthawks with Stallone and Rutger Hauer, which is a
Yes.
phenomenal movie nobody talks about. I love that. That's like 80s dance party weekend. And
Yeah.
people are like, oh, great. They're all going to be musicals. No, 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 they're not. They're just going to have 2 good minutes of dance party.
Yeah. And then the rest of the movie, who cares? But
Right.
that would be my dream too for an audience in general, is just to attract people who are just down to have a good time and
Yeah.
watch stuff. Because we definitely have a very sophisticated like audience looking for like really good art house stuff, but I really enjoy the trash watch with an enthusiastic audience.
Oh,
Yeah.
we can bring that sophistication level way down at the road show. Don't worry about that.
Yeah. I mean, I try sometimes, and some stuff hits more than others. I did do Cats on 420 last year, and that was
Come on, that's some swing for the fence programming right there.
yeah, it was a revelation. And the funny thing is, hopefully Universal doesn't hear about this, but they basically were like, no, they've been saying no to everyone who wanted to do late night Cats screenings because we are sensitive about it. We do not.
We don't want it to be that.
Yeah, make fun of it. And so I just told them 420 fell on a Saturday. I was like, oh, we're just doing like a party screening where I do trivia and stuff. And I did do these things, but it's like kind of just, and I had to share with them the copy I wrote about it.
Wow.
Any marketing. But it
Amazing.
just didn't dawn on them or wasn't addressed that, oh yeah, it's Saturday night 420 and we're showing Cats, because that movie's very disturbing. And as it goes on, because I saw it way later, and it really like I was like, what is cinema? What are movies?
Where are we in the world?
Yeah.
That's so weird. That's like MGM saying, you know, we don't really appreciate people having fun with Showgirls. This is a very serious film.
Yeah.
It's just like all the money that's being denied. I mean, I'm not sure that Cats really set the world on fire in its straight theatrical release. I would think any kind of screening and celebration of it, for whatever reason and whatever it is, it's getting eyes on the film.
They're still not over it.
Yeah, and the best part is, we unfortunately have, it's like a deal called Screen Vision where they play like Chevrolet ads before film, right? Which it just ruins the vibe for me, even though it's only a couple minutes. But the funny thing is, though, and when I introduced it, I was like, what is this one ad about? It was an older couple, one dealing with Alzheimer's, but how a Chevrolet truck or a Ford reignited their memories and passion and love.
Wow.
And I was like, what is this? And who directed it? And it was the director of Cats, and it's the only thing he's done.
The poor guy blacklisted forever.
Oh, wow. He even got an IMDb credit. I just pulled it up. Tom Hooper, Chevrolet, A Holiday to Remember. The only thing since Cats.
Magic.
Like, the synergy there was insane.
It's crazy. I'm so excited to see both the films, Miss 45 and Vice Squad, with an indoor experience, because I love the drive-in. It's the only downside of running the drive-in is that I'm not able to go and experience other cool things happening in the area.
Yeah.
So being able to kind of celebrate with you guys and all come together and bring our two fan bases together, it's just kind of a destined match made in heaven, maybe more than any other trip as we venture out. And Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, they were originally going to be our first stop on the tour, but now they're a little bit later.
Yeah, initially this was going to be late January, but
that's right.
we started to talk about this before we started recording, but I'll share it here. So Trey sends me an email, and you get an email, you get a preview of like the first half sentence or something like that. So I saw it come up, and it said, unfortunately, the powers that be, and I couldn't read the rest. And I'm like, oh my God, the powers that be found out what we wanted to run. And they said, no way, we are going to soil our screen with Ms. 45 and Vice Squad. And then I actually read it, and it said that they're booking The Brutalist, which is a big event on celluloid. And we had to get bumped for later. And I was like,
we'll take that. We will gladly step
I thought we were being run out of town before we even got there.
Oh, yeah. Don't worry, because Caligula, the new Ultimate Cut on 35 is coming too. So
Oh,
hell yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. So, yeah, this is nothing as bad as that.
Yeah. Our fans are going to absolutely love this push, and it's the perfect shift and pivot for us, as for years we relied upon Comic-Cons and horror conventions and things like that, punk rock flea markets, which we love doing. But taking that extra step and extra forethought to say, hey, we want to bring our love of 35 millimeter to other groups that also love and appreciate 35 millimeter. It's just so exciting. I mean, I can tell already off of even just this hour podcast that we've done together. It's just going to be so rewarding with the connections that we make and relationships that we nourish with the people that are responsible for reviving and carrying on the future of our culture. So, Trey, I'm so excited that we made this work, my dude.
Yeah, and I apologize about that bump. But I mean, it just gives us more time to hype everyone up.
No, I think it's destined when it happens. Like for me, I think we should really take it upon ourselves to add little elements, whether it's bringing certain characters in, like you said, with the food. Like, how fun would that be? We bring Mama Beth in, and she comes and shares her love as well. I think it would be a great stroke. So, really looking forward to it, my friend. Please let the fans know where they can go to support the Philadelphia Film Society, what they can do as far as following you on socials, any of that stuff.
So it's the Philadelphia Film Society, the nonprofit org. Our website for the longest time has been filmadelphia.org.
Wow, nice.
There is no PH at the beginning there, but filmadelphia.org. And our socials are, I think it's like Philly Film SOC for Instagram and Twitter and all that kind of stuff, or X,
Yep.
whatever it's called. And we're located, the Film Society Center is right at Broad and Chestnut in Center City. And then we run the Film Society Boars and East, which are Boars is at 4th and Chestnut in Old City. And then the East is right near 2nd and Chestnut. It's on this like little like courtyard walkway. And we show studio films, international films, art house films, restorations, and then about 25 to 30 rep titles a month at the Film Center of all shapes and sizes, bona fide, undisputed canon classics, new canon, late night. I do trivia once a month with like a throwback film where it's like one you've probably seen a decent amount of times, but it's just great to watch for the crowd.
Yeah.
We do tons of late night programming.
Join the party, join the culture. Like I say, like you have to really dedicate yourself and sometimes travel a little bit
to get that extra kick out of life. And for a film fan and a movie fan, we are at a crossroad when it comes to our love and our passion and our movie houses and experiences that we all share together in a darkened theater. So the idea of bringing these new fans that have kind of discovered and fallen in love with film, and showing them, hey, there's options all over the place if you guys really dedicate yourselves to take the step for it. So, Trey, thank you so much for making the time for us, but thank you so much for, being such a key part of revitalizing my childhood memories, my childhood theaters, and my heart when it comes to where this all started.
I mean, no problem at all. My office is in the basement of the film center, so it's so rare I get to actually just like gush and talk about love of film, and I just really appreciate you guys so much.
Dude, nothing but love. Yeah, and as far as the roadshow dates go,
well, I can tell you what we have announced so far. And if you check our social media, if you check our Facebook, our website, our Linktree, our Patreon, our Instagram, all that, we'll announce these, and the theaters themselves will announce these as they come. But as of right now, here is the list of roadshow dates that tickets are available for. On February 8th, that's a Saturday, at Union County Performing Arts Center in Rahway, New Jersey, we have a double feature of Phantasm and The Fog. That's the original double feature that went out in 1980 when the Fog came out from Avco Embassy. On the 21st of February, this is a Friday, we have the Highway Theater in Jenkintown, Pennsylvania. It's a single feature, but with all the trimmings, of Mario Bava's Kill Baby Kill. And that's actually a print that was part of the Orgy of the Living Dead reissue triple feature in the early 70s that I think has an alternate title edited in that says Curse of the Living Dead. On February 28th, we will be at the Philadelphia Film Society's Philadelphia Film Center in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, if you hadn't guessed it, with a double feature of Ms. 45 and Vice Squad. On the 5th of March, that's a Wednesday, we'll be at the Ambler Theater for 35mm Film Day in Ambler, Pennsylvania. That'll be a double feature, 1976 Nature Gone Wild double feature of Grizzly and Squirm. On Friday, March 7th, we will be at the Everett Theater in Middletown, Delaware for a 1966 double feature of The Ghost and Mr. Chicken and Munster Go Home. That was an actual double feature that played theaters back in 1966. And our final date on the tour is an interesting one. This is Thursday, March 20th. This will be at the Nighthawk Cinema in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, New York. This is a single feature, and we're collaborating with the Deuce Film Series on a screening of Equinox. And this is basically the Deuce Film Series does their own thing. They do a series of screenings where they pick a theater, they pick a movie that played on one of the 42nd Street Times Square theaters in New York during that era of the Grindhouse there, and they tell you what was playing up and down the street that night, tell you history of the theater that they're talking about for this movie, then they play the thing. They're skewing that a little bit more drive-in themed, and they'll have us there talking about drive-ins, and then we'll all watch Equinox together. Tickets for all of these are available on the respective websites of the theaters, and if you follow our social media, it'll be there. And like I said, if you check our linked tree, if you go to our link tree, all those things are there, and as well as on our website.
Get out there, guys. Support your film culture. Make this all happen. Bring that love to your area, no matter where you're listening from. We always say it. The only way that these institutions are going to survive is if you go out and patronize them as often as possible. 35mm for life. We can't wait to see you, my friend. And on that note, Jeff, take it away, my friend.
Ladies and gentlemen, thanks again for coming out tonight to the Mahoning Drive-In Theater. We hope you'll come back and see us again real soon. The exit is on the right-hand side of the screen at the front of the field, and most importantly, have a very safe trip home. Good night, and God bless you.